Hey everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about the Adidas Nora shoes. Now this shoe is a slim cup sole, and in the box it comes with the shoes itself and one set of laces already attached to the shoe. It does not come with a second set of laces. Now I went true to size with these, and they felt really nice. It was a nice snug fit, but not overly tight to where it was super uncomfortable or I felt like I needed to size up. I feel like this shoe is going to go well if you have a normal foot or a narrow foot, but for people with wide feet, I would recommend trying these on in person at first before deciding to buy a pair. Now, one notable feature of this shoe is that it has actual arch support. Now, it's not going to be a super huge difference since most skate shoes typically don't have that and are mostly flat, but I feel like this arch support did help a lot with the comfort and the longevity of these shoes. Now that's going to be really nice for someone who is looking for a shoe with arch supports, but if you require some sort of like special insole support or whatnot, I would say you would still need to replace the stock insole with insoles of your choice. Now I've been skating these shoes for about a month now, and honestly I've been liking them a lot. Now the fit stayed very consistent throughout my use of this shoe. It didn't get smaller, it didn't get very loose. I only had to retie or readjust my shoes a few times. And that's really nice because with a lot of other shoes that I've had, I would usually need to retie them or readjust them a lot because the shoe would generally get a lot more floppy or loose. With these shoes, that didn't happen with them whatsoever. Now the shoe was very stiff at first, but I wore these around just walking around or whatnot, didn't skate them just to break them in for about a week, and after a week it felt like they really did loosen up a little bit, just enough to where it's comfortable, but not to where it became a very floppy shoe. And that feeling, again, stayed very consistent throughout my use of these shoes. Now I found this shoe to be very comfortable. I didn't have to think about like wanting another shoe that I thought was more comfortable or wanting to get a new pair of shoes. I'm still using these shoes. They're pretty beat up, but very comfortable. One day I even did a 10-mile hike throughout the city, and it was okay for the most part, but towards the end there was a lot of discomfort around the ball of my feet, but that's understandable. These shoes weren't meant for that, and I don't recommend doing that, but they did hold up very well. Now the board feel felt very good. It wasn't too much of a notable difference to what I'm usually used to, which is usually a Vans vulcanized shoe. And I had that generally same board feel, nothing too different, but I did feel a lot more protected because I felt like the shoe was much more sturdier to what I was really generally used to. And the shoe, durability wise, has held up very nice. There isn't any holes, really most of it is cosmetic. There isn't any really real stitching tear. This one right here is very recent, and it's only very tiny. Now it did wear through the rubber on the toe cap a little bit, but I'll get more into that later. Now the sole works great in most cases, more on that later, and I only have a little bit of wear on my back foot, but it hasn't affected the performance of the shoe, and it's not very noticeable unless you look pretty close. But sole is really nice, stays grippy for the most parts, and more on that later. Now I'd say these shoes have a very nice flick. It felt very consistent, and throughout my use of these shoes, I was doing a lot of kickflips, a lot more flat ground than what I usually do, and everything just felt super consistent. This can also be a thing of skill, you know, I'm getting more used to flat ground or whatnot, so that may also have an effect. But I will say, I've been doing a lot more flip tricks just because it's feeling a lot more comfortable in these shoes, and I feel like I'm being very consistent with them because of them. Now, impact protection did feel fine. I wasn't jumping down any stair sets or whatnot, but running out of transition where you need to bail on a trick and instead of knee sliding, you just run out and run down the ramp, that can take a pretty big toll on your feet, and sometimes you might land wrong. That did happen a few times, and for the most parts, I took the impact or just ran out, maybe feel a little bit sore, but overall there wasn't a point where I had to just sit down and stop because my feet were hurting because of that impact. And overall, I found myself that I was skating for a lot longer than I would usually do, because when for other shoes, my feet would kind of be really sore or hurt too much to where I had to sit down and relax. With these shoes, I didn't have that problem whatsoever. So I'd said a lot of good things about these shoes, but what are the bad parts of it? Well, for one, the toe cap, it's not good for knee slides. Now there's a little bit hole here where I kind of wore through the rubber, and there's still material underneath, but it's a little bit noticeable. that was just from one night of knee sliding, and it wasn't a lot of knee slides. And this surprises me because Nora is a skater that actually does use knee pads for knee slides, so I figured that her shoe would have been designed around that in mind, but it's not. So be wary of that if you do a lot of knee slides. This toe cap, it's not great for that. It's going to wear through very, very fast. For a more personal preference thing, the low top isn't my favorite. I prefer a mid or high top because with transition skating, boards just love to stab at your ankles, and that happened a lot when wearing these shoes. Now, of course, this is mostly of a personal preference, but I would prefer the shoe to be at least a mid top, just so that ankle is protected from board stabs. But since it's a low top shoe, just have to get used to it. Now, the back of the shoe isn't made of leather or suede, it's a synthetic textile, and I don't think this part of the shoe would be very durable for tricks that use this part of the shoe, such as heel flips, so keep that in mind. This is not suede, it's a synthetic textile, and may not hold up to the abuse of skateboarding. Now, not having an extra set of laces is a huge shame, because I tore this lace from the knee sliding, and it was very, very fast. And luckily there is just enough lace to where I could just tie it up and not worry about it. But along various points of this lace, it's very, very close to breaking. And I haven't been doing knee slides because I don't want to wear through the toe cap and I don't want to burn through the laces. So not having an extra set of laces is pretty disappointing. And yes, I know a set of laces is like $3-4, but I'm paying money for a shoe and having an extra set of laces would have been nice. Now, previously, I was talking about how the sole works for the most part, and what I mean by is that you're trying to stay on your board and not slip off, the sole is going to get the job done. However, we've been getting a lot of rain here recently, and I found that on some very slippery surfaces when it's wet, these shoes do not grip whatsoever, and you are at a very high chance of slipping and falling down, so be careful with that. So I would say on surfaces like kitchen floors, the crosswalk paint, especially if it's a heavy paint, and very smooth metal surfaces, you are definitely at a very high chance of slipping and falling when those surfaces are wet. So be careful and watch your step when it's raining. Now, the shoe doesn't have any tongue straps, so what I mean is that it's two elastic bands on either side of the tongue, which makes sure that the tongue stays in the center and doesn't flop to one side. These shoes don't have that, so the tongue is going to lean to one side just like that. And no matter how many times I actually try to readjust it to the middle, it would always slide to one side. Personally, it's a cosmetic thing, but it does still bug me a lot. Now, it seems like the availability of these are very limited. Not so much so that it's an artificial scarcity, but at least in my area, a lot of the local shops don't really carry too much of this model. They seem to carry a lot more of the other Adidas models, such as the Forum 84 and the Taishan shoes, and much more colorways and many more sizes. But for me, I feel like those shoes may be a little bit too much shoe. There's too much material on that. Personal preference thing, I like the slim cup soles, and Nora's fit the that criteria of that for me. But it's kind of hard to find locally in the colorway I may like, or more importantly, the sizes I need, which it's actually really hard to find locally. So for this pair, I had to resort to buying them online, which I really don't like doing. I really prefer to shop locally. But that may change if, the shops around here have my size. Now for the parts that may be a pro or con depending on who you ask, this is a slim cup sole, like I've said before. I think this is going to be a great shoe for someone who's used to vulcanized shoes, but wants to explore a cup sole option. They're going to love this a lot because it's not too different from a vulcanized shoe, and it's a really, really great introduction into cup soles. Now for people that like cup soles already, but want a much more slim version of it, rather than the the typical giant, bulky, chunky cup soles, this is also a very, very nice option. But for the people that prefer big, chunky cup soles that have a lot of material on them, they may not like this shoe because it might not offer that same amount of protection or longevity that the giant shoes have. Now the MSRP is $80 USD. You can definitely find these shoes on sale, but sizes may be limited. And for the MSRP, I personally think it's fair for the quality that you're getting, but for other people, that may be a little bit of a high price. But like I said, you can find these on sale. You just gotta look for your size. But yeah, that has been another video. If you think I missed anything or have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. And as always, I will see you in the next one.